morning.
So,
For anyone that doesn't know about this incident, it's probably one of the largest UFO cases anywhere in the world. And I will try to go into some detail today, but we are in fact pushed for time. So I will tell you what happened. The official story was that this was just a military exercise. Nothing could be further from the truth. And today, we will prove it. It's a strange turn of events that brings me here today. It was not my choice. I never dreamt I would be standing here in front of you. In fact, it was never my intention to ever speak publicly. On the 26th of February 2016, my life, my neighbours' lives, and their friends and family changed forever. What we witnessed, we can never unsee. And if this thing didn't come down behind my house, I wouldn't have seen it either. But I did. Since coming forward, I have been ridiculed, falsely accused, bullied and trolled on many occasions in some sort of smear campaign. I have been placed in a position where I have been forced to defend myself, and today will be no different. I've been accused of doing this for money, when nothing could be further from the truth. But there is a price, and the price has been to my life. Confidentiality is always, and still is, my #1 priority. I would never expose a witness or deliberately put them at risk. And every witness that has come forward to me can testify to this fact, some of whom are present here today. And I thank them for their bravery in coming forward and supporting this case. And even though they will not speak publicly, they will speak privately and have done so on many occasions. Today, I would like you to imagine that you're in a court of law, and that you, and everyone watching around the world today, are the judge and jury in this case. And I ask you to seek the truth in this matter, to set aside your personal beliefs, and to find the evidence that we will present today. We will prove the military knowingly and expectedly set an ambush for a huge interdimensional UFO, and without first attempting any communications, pursued and shot down one of the smaller craft it jettisoned, while continuing to pursue the others. The police closed the roads and the footpaths, whilst the military conducted a very loud and disturbing clean-up operation for the entire area in what the military calls silent hours, with both helicopters and troops on the ground, and this all within a residential area and next to a hospital. This started for me on the 23rd of February 2016, when I noticed two small grey twin propeller planes flying very low and very slow over my village. And we have RAF St Athan just down the road, so it wasn't really a big surprise to see a military aircraft. But they don't tend to stay. These are the aircraft involved, and these are their radar returns. Snake 48 and this Army Corps Jackal 1 took it in turns to circle Pentyrch all day and all night for 3 days and 3 nights. The Wednesday morning was really when we started to notice the behaviour of these aircraft. And one of my neighbours, David, had come out of his house and he was cursing because this small aircraft had kept him awake all night. And so we watched, and it wasn't long before the second aircraft, almost identical to the first, turned up to take its place. And Wednesday night, that was all I could hear. Every 15 minutes, this small grey twin prop plane flying over my house. And when someone's pointed a sound out to you, that's all you can hear. And you kind of sit there and anticipate when it's going to come back. So Wednesday night, I had a very restless night. Going into Thursday, David had contacted Wales Online. Hi, please can you find out why the RAF have been constantly flying over our houses for the last 9 hours, CF159QA, Pentyrch in Cardiff. It's getting loud now and very annoying. It's like a big aircraft carrier, sounds very loud. Friends. They didn't respond. The Ministry of Defence was emailed. They too did not respond. So we decided amongst ourselves and my other neighbours that clearly they were watching for something. So we decided that if they were still there later, we would stay out and watch with them. We clearly didn't expect to see what we saw. David suggested that perhaps they were watching for Russian planes. And I know that sounds outrageous, but it was only the week before that our RAF had turned away 2 Russian Tu-160 bombers from our airspace. So I think he thought there was going to be some kind of real-life dogfight. Going into Thursday night, we stood in my garden, lit the fire pit, and watched this small grey plane, by now starting to fly in figure-8 patterns. And it got to about 2 AM in the early hours of Friday, 26th of February. And I was just about to go in, I was freezing cold, and I said to Dave, look, you know, I'm tired, it's late, nothing's happening. When I heard what sounded like a missile coming, and it was this.
Hi Caz, we can't hear you properly. Is the microphone up higher?
Okay, sorry. Have some water. This is the E3 Sentry plane, a NATO plane, above Pentyrch in South Wales. Excuse me one second. So because this plane had turned up, we decided we'd stay a little longer. It started to circle, not small circles. We estimated it took about 5 minutes to go around once. Now Pentyrch is in an elevated position and you can see in every direction but north because that's where the actual mountain is. David said perhaps it's taxiing for the airport. Cardiff International Airport, where you wouldn't expect to see a NATO plane. No, it doesn't go up any higher. I'll bring it closer to my face. Is that better? Sorry guys. After the 7th time it went around, one red light became visible high above the trees behind my house. And I called for Donna, one of my other neighbours who'd been watching with us that night. She'd gone into the home to make us all hot drinks. Didn't get an answer. Called a second time, still no answer. So David and I ran to the 5-bar gate that overlooks the farmland behind my house to get an unobstructed view as to what was going on. And one red light turned into 3 lights. Didn't split. It came in side on. We're talking about the very pinnacle of a huge pyramid UFO. This is the true likeness to what was seen that night. It came in side on, turning very slowly anti-clockwise, and as it did so, came down in a pendulum motion, and jettisoned a really bright green object out of the top, like it had been fired out of a cannon. This green object moved across to my left-hand side and above the treetops, and just rocked there gently, backwards and forwards. I can't tell you what shape it was. It was brighter than the moonlight, and actually hurt my eyes to look at it. The pyramid listed to the right-hand side, still turning very slowly anti-clockwise, and tilted to the right, and moving away from us. And I stood on the 5-bar gate to get a better look through the bare trees, and said to David, it's landing, thinking it was coming down, when in reality, the field rises there and is the foot of the Garth Mountain. When it neared the ground, it ejected, I described, as a hand of lightning that came out of this craft. But not thin lightning like we have here, it was thick, fire-coloured, like a fingers, like a hand of lightning. And the whole thing lit up really brightly, so you could see around the brightest lights that this was a solid craft, and not just a string of lights. David said, whilst I was looking at the bottom, and I don't know to this day why I was fixated on it touching the ground, but I was. He said he saw 15 or 20 he described as orbs, just come out the top of this thing. And they seemed to dance and mingle with each other. And I didn't see any of those because I was fixated on touching the ground. And such was the size of it from 200 metres away that whilst I looked at the bottom, you couldn't see the top. That's how big. I was still standing on the gate and I heard the military planes coming. The E3 Sentry is still above us. And I looked up to see these two that I now know to be C-17 aircraft, American planes, flying wingtip to wingtip. And when I looked back, I couldn't see the pyramid anymore. That's not to say it wasn't there, I just couldn't see it. I still stood on the gate. I watched these two aircraft. Two further aircraft came from the RAF, two big Hercules aircraft, and suddenly you had four aircraft, the two C-17s in the middle, the two C-130s out wide, and the green object that shot, they were going towards where the pyramid was last seen, and the green object, the first object that came out, shot across and in front of these four aircraft and flashed three really bright strobes at them, and seemed to get excited. Like it skipped and bobbed like I described, like Tigger off Winnie the Pooh, away into the distance, and it bathed all of these aircraft in green light. It was quite surreal. The E3 Sentry was still above us. When they had gone out of sight, we were approached by two barrel-shaped objects. These things were completely silent, about the size of a small car. They were completely smooth on the outside. I want to say like they were made of glass. But I don't know because I didn't touch them, but one of them moved across to my left-hand side and stopped above the hedge, about 20 to 30 feet away from us. And I just stared at it just for a few seconds because I wanted the details. I wanted to see. I could see all the insides moving like white noise on a TV screen, but it was more 3D than that. Like it was mixing inside. And then I looked to see where the other one was. And that hadn't stopped. And I was still stood on the gate, and by this time, he was right over the top of me. This close. And it changed colour. From red to green. And I felt it scan me. Like I was lifted from the inside. This elation. These things were not hostile. Not hostile. And I did hear a man's voice tell the world what you witnessed here. And I said I will. And these two objects moved off in different directions. The red object that was above the hedge moved away to my left, and it had remained sentry the whole time. And the green object moved away to my right-hand side and above the rooftops of the houses. And David and I had walked down to the second, what we call the second field, where this pyramid had come in, because he said he saw 15 or 20 of these things, to see if there were any more. It was so wet and slippery underfoot, in the middle of a mountain, in the middle of the night. There was nothing we could see. Our phones didn't work. That was the other thing. Nothing electronic worked. We think it had something to do with the E3 Sentry, but equally it could have had something to do with the extremely high EMF that was emitted from these craft. Gary will get into that afterwards. We went back to my house, and David and I were polar opposites. He sat there staring into the abyss, trying to make sense of everything that had just happened. And I was energised. I needed to tell someone, anyone, that would know what to do with this information, because I was not, and am not, a ufologist. Then, or even now. The following morning, Wales Online put out a cover story, how military planes and helicopters have kept parts of South Wales awake. It's some kind of exercise. Well, I didn't know you weren't supposed to talk about UFOs. So I launched into a comment. Thanks for sharing, but I can categorically state that this was no exercise. Last night I saw absolutely everything, and what they were chasing were not planes. I will take a lie detector anywhere for anyone. What I witnessed last night will stay with me for the rest of my life. What is more, the military knew they were coming and had a spotter plane in the air for 2 days waiting for the event. And when it came, 4 planes chased the green object, whilst the spotter plane circled approximately 6 red oval objects which formed the pyramid shape.
Several red spheres hovered silently above the fields until the helicopters came. And I did have two debunkers. One of them called themselves the Smoking Man, using a fake Facebook profile, and the other one called himself Agent Fox Mulder, because they like their play on words. Genuinely. Excuse me. Well, I wanted to know what had happened to the green object. So whilst I tossed and turned in my bed, I heard a huge explosion from the direction of Pentrych. So, Pentrych, because of the comments made by other people, was my starting point at the other end, because I wanted to find the impact crater. What went off on Pentrych Common at 4 AM? Helicopters landed for ages, then took off again, circled round for ages. I heard them too. It was two explosions, some sort of military exercise. As there was a Chinook, Pumas, Apaches flying. But the interesting comment was from Wales Online. At 3:39 in the morning, they're still working on a story about this, and they will post the link as soon as they have it. If there's an exercise, there must be a press briefing. They didn't know. Further comments. I'm assuming this was your chopper that kept me up for hours on end. What's going on? Nightmare. There was an explosion at Fish. At one point there were 3 helicopters. Is there something going on over Pentrych at 4 AM? 3 helicopters circling for hours, keeping us all awake. And this went on. There were hundreds of comments. So I decided I go to Pentrych Common. I wanted to find the impact crater. And Stephen, one of my other friends, had come over. We went down to the field to begin with. It was snowing in the field where the pyramid came in, not in the surrounding fields, just in that one field. We then went to Pentrych Common, and all of the metal that had been on the common for years had been neatly stacked up along the roadside. There had clearly been a meticulous metal search on the common, what the military call silent hours. Stephen and I, he was driving around, I asked him to pull the car over. I saw 2 people walking their dogs. And bearing in mind this is the morning after the night before, had they seen or heard anything? And they told me about the Chinooks that landed on Pentrych Common, told me about the helicopters and the troops on the ground, and how the first explosion was an air explosion, and the second one sounded like something hit the ground in Smilog Woods. Well, the Daily Mirror also posted, written by the same journalists, terrified neighbours in the country village awake during the night to sounds of explosions and fighter jets. Villagers were terrified when they awoke to sounds of explosions in the sky, not on the ground, in the sky. Remember that. I asked Gary to write to the Ministry of Defence. Why was a meticulous metal search carried out in the early hours of February 2016 on Pentrych Common? What were they searching for? Ministry of Defence said this information is withheld under Section 26. Suddenly, bits of old bike, bits of old washing machine are now national security. Well, I didn't know where Smilog Woods was located when these witnesses told me on Pentrych Common. And I felt very stupid when they pointed to this enormous wooded hill, 800-acre wooded hill, that rises behind the Royal Glamorgan Hospital. And I decided there and then, I wanted to go to Smilog Woods, I wanted to find the impact crater. Now Stephen and I, this is on the 26th still, and because I knew the trajectory of the green object, it wasn't long before we found the debris trail. And when you look at Smilog Woods from the common side, it looks like a giant W. The right-hand valley is lower than the left. And if, as I believe, that green object was under intelligent control and it was shot at over Pentrych Common and losing altitude, you want to make that right-hand valley to clear that mountain. Unfortunately, on the other side, there's another hill that rises, and this is where the crystal is. We fought our way through the woodland. I was exhausted. I needed a drink. I said to Stephen, let's go back and tell the others what we'd found. And we hatched a plan to go up the very next morning to find the impact site. This is what we did. We took cameras with us. We followed the debris trail through to its end. 60-foot trees have been snapped in half. Healthy trees, an impossibility in nature. An impossibility. We followed the debris trail through to its end, and instead of finding a huge impact crater on the ground, we found this area, which is at the end of the debris trail. These trees snapped in half, all at the same height. There were burn marks on all the surrounding trees and scrape marks. It takes an awful lot of energy to snap a tree.
Like phosphorus, isn't it? That's good. Something to burn that tree up there. I don't know if we get something like that. That would be good.
Just about make out the burn marks on the trees and a very pungent smell of phosphorus, some kind of like fireworks in the air. All of the canopies of all of the trees were out. They had been snapped off, not cut. And I've tried to enhance this bottom picture here because this is a living tree with a 2-foot by 1-foot wound on it, and the living wood has curled outwards towards you. I don't know if you've ever run a blade along a ribbon, how it curls out. This is living wood. Something very big and very heavy was dragged upwards against that tree. Now, one other strange thing that happened on the morning of the 27th was my hair had turned completely white. Now, I've been told that this is an impossibility. But it wasn't. My hair had turned completely white. These pictures are from the crash site video. Now, I am a little bit salt and pepper now. This was 6 years ago. Okay. The Forestry Commission felled the debris trail. This is where it gets interesting. All of the trees that were damaged by whatever ever went into the woods that night were felled by the Forestry Commission. So we asked Gary to ask National Resources for Wales why they felled these trees. And they told us that these trees were infected with larch disease or Phytophthora ramorum, and that's why these trees were felled. But to the layman, that would be a perfect excuse. But because I knew the truth, I knew that there must be something else. So we looked into it further. And I didn't ask National Resources for Wales, who told us they had a plant health notice issued on these trees. I found their management strategy meetings. It's a bit like asking the Bank of England for a £10 note because they're the people, you know. So, and this is from 2010 to 2018. And these are all the plant health notices issued for Wales for that period of time. And as you can see on the other map here, have the A4119. That road is shown in its entirety. And just above, you can see the location at Royal Glamorgan Hospital and Smilog Woods. And there has never been a plant health notice issued on Smilog Woods for larch disease. So, we looked a little deeper. On the left is a map showing the brown areas are the areas outlined for felling. The map on the right, the area circled, is the area they felled, was never outlined for felling. And the yellow dotted line that you can see is the debris trail and the impact site. Now, one of the things they're supposed to do for larch disease is what we call a sanitised felling. They must perform a sanitised felling. They must wear protective covers on their feet and on their bodies. They must wash all the equipment. Every precaution must be taken so as not to spread this pathogen off-site. They must leave the land free and fallow for a minimum period of 3 years. Well, there was a place in Birmingham called Lickey Hills, and they really did have larch disease. And every branch, every trunk was taken away. And they also issued warning signs. We would ask visitors to help us in our efforts to stop this disease from spreading by observing any closures, cleaning your shoes, wheels and dog's paws so as not to spread this pathogen. But in Smilog Woods, there were no warning signs. Does that look like a sanitised felon to you? And they replanted the area. I highlighted some of the new saplings they planted with white lines so you can see them in these hills of clay-coloured earth. There's a new tree. Well, shortly after the event, we had a very strange bunch of people from the camp in the fields of Pentyrch. And they'd given different stories as to who they were. They were a fracking survey team, or they were Vodafone doing field research, which piqued my curiosity. So I went out and took a few photographs of them to ask them who they were. Stephen was with me, and when we approached the gate, we saw 2 soldiers coming towards us carrying guns, automatic weapons that did not have yellow caps in the end. They told us they were doing a military exercise in case of an emergency situation. I asked them, do you need guns and that? They said, yes, we do. Well, why are you hiding them? You know, because they were trying to wrap them up in their jackets. So we rounded the corner where this campsite was. And I said before, you take the man out of the army, but you can't take the army out of the man. You could not get your foot between the drawstrings of these tents. Everything was regimented in perfectly straight lines. Initially, I started to walk around the outside of the field. I had my little dog with me, and I said to Stephen, I want to get closer. We cut across the field, and we were charged at by a huge dog that came out of one of these tents. I could see 2 men in the furthest tent away that I now know to be the commanding officer's tent, and shouted at them, you know, country boys are you? Put your dog on a lead, this is lambing season. Farmer's got a shotgun, he's not afraid to use it. So I had an answer, what? That was my in. And I walked up the middle of the camp and took these photographs. Without these photographs, there'd be absolutely no proof these people were ever there. I asked Gary, because I wanted to cut off any avenues they had for escape to make up lies. To ask the Cardiff government what applications were granted for anyone to use the land in the Pentyrch fields from the beginning of the 1st of January 2015 to the end of December 31st 2016, so we gave them a full 2 years for any planning application for any change of use of that land, which would include said campsite. And there were no planning applications for the change of use of that land. There were no applications for surveys on that land. The only people who could have done this were the military. But we needed to prove it. So we asked the Ministry of Defence. Local residents were told they were conducting a military exercise in case of an emergency situation. Why were the residents not told the military were conducting an exercise there? Well, the Ministry of Defence holds no records within the scope of our request. Really? So we asked them again. Why did you send a clean-up crew after the event? What were they searching for? And why were they carrying guns? MOD's response to your earlier Freedom of Information request is enclosed. As stated, the Ministry of Defence's response on the 24th of October 2018, no information is held in the scope of your request. A further search has been conducted, and I can confirm the Ministry of Defence holds no information. Really? So we asked them again. If this was just an exercise, why use the field to Pentyrch when Bridge is just up the road and is MOD land? And why were the residents not notified this was happening in advance? And now they changed their story, Some of the information is held within the scope of your request. This information is withheld under Section 26. Well, it's either they have no information, which they double-checked and said they had no information, or it's Section 26. So we wanted to find out. We needed it in black and white. Who were these people? Only the military can hide behind Section 26. Why were the soldiers carrying automatic weapons that did not have yellow caps in the end of the barrel, implying they were carrying live rounds? Why would these people have to be armed? Information is withheld under Section 26. Really? Men wearing forensic white paper suits were seen searching the field, so if there was a risk of contamination to the team, was there also a risk to local residents? MOD holds no record of contamination associated with this training exercise. No exercise has ever been listed for these people, to this date. And why were the military in the fields of Pentyrch during this time? Information is withheld under Section 26. The military, not Vodafone, not a fracking survey team, the military. We were armed. Well, we did ask on 2 Freedom of Information requests, why did they lie about their identity? It's their duty to tell me. And initially, they skirted over the information, thinking that we wouldn't notice. So we resubmitted it. A new search for the information is now being completed within the Ministry of Defence, and I can confirm that some of the information in the scope is held. However, all of the information falls entirely within Section 26. Well, according to their rules and regulations, training over private land, Section 26B, identification. All members of the services must disclose their identity and that of their unit if asked to do so by landowners or officials of National Parks and Forestry Commission. It may not always be possible for landowners and officials to be readily recognised, but any persons questioning service and personnel on private land must be assumed to have a valid reason for doing so. Therefore, the utmost courtesy must be extended to them. Parties as service personnel or individuals are not to avoid any person attempting to question them. But they did, and they lied. This I've added because it took us over 3 years to get an answer for this. And this is simply about the aircraft that were circling Pentyrch in the days preceding the event. And I've cut this short because there were multiple requests by Gary, bless him. Nearly 2 years and 6 months I've not seen or been notified of any reply. We simply asked why they were there. Why no NOTAM or notice to airmen was ever issued for these aircraft to this date. MOD holds no information within the scope of your request. Really? So we asked them again. And 2 years, nearly 3 years later, we eventually get an acknowledgement. Would you please tell me why your plane, ZZ418 Walker Beechcraft, was spotted by witnesses flying in circles and figure-8 formations in Pentyrch, South Wales, from the 22nd of February 2016 to the 26th of February 2016. This plane was also identified on public internet flight radar websites. Information is withheld. Guess what? Under Section 26. No NOTAM has ever been issued, no exercise. This document by the Defence Infrastructure Organisation, the people in charge. And what we'll do today is prove this could never have been an exercise. The application process. They have to do a detailed recce, which is of the entire area. That includes maps and routes, an environmental survey, risk assessments. Are their soldiers going to get injured on that bit of metal over there? You know, all of this has to be done and planned months in advance. Months in advance. The brigade, the DIO and Brecon, can authorise training as soon as the owner's written consent is received. Okay. Well, we asked National Resources for Wales, who own the land, and Smilog Woods. Why was Smilog Woods closed to the public during the time February 25th and 26th of February 2016? What exactly is the reason for the military being in Smilog Woods during this time? Whose authority was it to close the woods to the public during this time? And why were the roads closed down in the areas of Pentrych and Smilog Woods during this time? And they answered us. There was no permission granted to the military to close the woodland and the public paths and let off explosives in the woodlands mentioned during these dates, or in fact, any dates. So we have no records. This type of activity would have required permission. Therefore, Regulation 12.4a, Environmental Information Regulations 2004 applies. No information is held. So they did not get permission from the landowner. So we also asked Rhondda Cynon Taf local authority, because they too owned some of the land in the area. We wanted to know what they knew, or if they were told. Did the council have prior warning that the exercise was taking place, and if so, how much notification was given? We refer to your Freedom of Information request in respect of the incidents on the night of the 25th and 26th of February 2016, which involved the supposed military exercise which took place in the area around Llantriston Common to Pentyrch, an area within which the Royal Glamorgan Hospital and the Royal Mint are located. The authority was not made aware of any exercises in that area on these dates, and is not aware of any council property being damaged. So they weren't told either. Now, according to their regulations, under Training Over Private Land Section 15, these are their own rules and regulations. The times of the exercise, including any night activities, there must be a ministerial briefing, number of troops, vehicles, helicopters, outside vehicles, for example, any intensive out-of-hours helicopters or fast jets activity, any foreign forces involved, the Americans were involved. Details of any open days or media briefings. There wasn't a media briefing. And how an exercise might affect the general public. The public weren't told. Hundreds of people called the police. And we know that Wales Online weren't told, because they were still working on a story of it at 3:39 in the morning. Also, the rules and regulations for training over private land, Section 2B, C and D. Training over private land is military training carried out on land by virtue of written permission from the private landowner. Well, we know they didn't have permission. Without it, no exercise could ever take place. It includes common land subject to open access rights in England and Wales. The use of privately owned land by the military personnel is not an entitlement. Not an entitlement. And the continued use for training is dependent on maintaining good relations with both landowners and local communities. Perhaps they'd like to tell the residents of Llantriston why they were low-flying over their houses in helicopters at 4:30 in the morning. Those wishing to carry out any training over private land are not allowed to do so without the approval of the Defence Training Estates, which is the DIO, and written agreement from the owners and occupiers. If they didn't have permission, they broke all the rules, not just some. Disruptive activities involving helicopters or deployment of large groups of personnel and vehicles by day or night require a greater degree of planning and notification. Which is, it just gets better. Units must pay particular attention to the prevention of noise, especially during silent hours. There was no when they hovered their helicopters over people's homes. And similarly, exercises are not to be planned in areas where disturbance would be caused to local inhabitants in their homes. Really. Service personnel on foot are entitled to use the public facilities the same as civilians, but must not monopolise the area. They closed all the footpaths and all the roads. And apparently, if a public right-of-way crosses an area of private land for training over private land, it must remain open to the public. There is no legal mechanism to close a public right-of-way for an exercise. If you want to go up and smell the roses and sit down and have a picnic in the middle of one of their exercises, you're entitled to do so. We asked South Wales Police. A number of roads were closed off during the exercise around the Royal Glamorgan Hospital in Smilog Woods. Who exactly gave the order? Why was it necessary to close the roads? And whose job was it to close the roads during these times stated? Well, their response was a refusal under Section 14, vexatious, worrisome to people. We're asking about road closures from 6 years ago, and we're being told that's worrisome to people. Now, I've cut out a lot of the stuff that's in between because there were multiple requests for them to answer this, and eventually we asked for an internal review. And they did answer us. This is South Wales Police, and it's laughable. In response to the road closures, we have been unable to locate any recorded information in relation to any road closures on the date specified. The officers involved have since left the organisation, and other inquiries have been unsuccessful. Really? How do they know who was involved? If they could find no information, how do they know which officers were involved? What, the police don't have computers, pocketbooks, statements? No recorded information, really. Okay. Going back to the use of pyrotechnics, simulated munitions by the Ministry of Defence, special attention is to be paid to any restrictions imposed by the landowner for the use of blank ammunition or pyrotechnics or training materials. When permission has been given, which they didn't have, for the use of live ammunition or pyrotechnics, that the police have to be told, and on no account should red flares be used for any training purpose. They're not allowed to use flares, and a lot of the debunkers have said, that's what I saw, flares. I think I know the difference between a pyramid and a string of lights. So we asked the Ministry of Defence told us what was the cause of the two explosions. They were controlled detonations of simulated munitions to assist the exercise. I'd really like to see them place one in the air. And they didn't have permission to use simulated munitions. But the explosion registered on the Richter scale 40 miles away in Monmouthshire. It shook patients awake in their beds in the hospital and shook people's homes. Such was the size of this explosion. It was not a simulated munition. So, decided to ask the Ministry of Defence, what person, organisation or public body did you receive written permission from to conduct this exercise over private land? MOD holds no information because they never had permission. What information was given to the local community or local government? We've already spoken to local government for such a loud and disturbing exercise over a congested area. MOD holds no information. Really? Were any restrictions placed upon you by the landowner organisation or public body prior to this exercise? They hold no information. What written permission did you receive to land your helicopters in silent hours in a congested area? The MOD holds no information. And can you supply a copy of a detailed recce, including a photocopy of the map and routes? And again, the Ministry of Defence have no information. A multi-billion pound operation, £3.8 billion worth of equipment was in the air, or $4.5 billion worth of equipment, and the Ministry of Defence don't have a single piece of paperwork to back this up. Not one. And that's the Ministry of Defence. So we asked South Wales Fire Service, did they know anything? Surely they must have been told something explosives were going off. And following an investigation where the service holds no information, they weren't told. We asked the hospital. Bearing in mind they do neurosurgery there. The hospital shook. The corridors filled with smoke. No emergency measures or services or procedures were undertaken, as no information was passed to the Royal Glamorgan Hospital about this exercise. God forbid anybody was having surgery that night. We asked the Royal Mint because it had been suggested that this exercise was to do with the Royal Mint. And whilst they say they had prior notification of the training exercise you refer to from the Welsh Extremism Counter-Terrorism Unit, a privately owned company paid for with taxpayers' money that can never be subjected to a Freedom of Information request, so we pressed them further to show us proof that they had prior notification, and they told us, we have no paperwork, no documented evidence for this notification of this event. Really? This is the Royal Mint. We were informed verbally. You've got a £3.8 billion military operation going on, and they phoned you. Really? Okay. Well, the biggest thing for me was the Ministry of Defence's own avoidance policy. And this policy is so serious that it involves royal households. In practice, military low flying is not conducted in certain areas. In particular, our aircraft do not conduct low flying within controlled airspace surrounding civil airports. Well, Cardiff International's just up the road. But it gets better. That also to avoid overflying centres of population with more than 10,000 inhabitants. There are over 13,000 inhabitants of Llantrisant alone, not including Bayeux or Pontyclun or any of the other places they overflew that night. But it gets better again. In addition, these are restrictions placed on the overflight of specific industrial. The Ministry, the Royal Mint sits on an industrial estate. Medical. Royal Glam's not a medical, is it? And other key establishments. Those key establishments are royal households. That's how serious this avoidance policy is, which they ignored that night. Now we do have additional witness testimony. I'm not the only witness, but I am the only one that's spoken out publicly. It's not so much the length of their testimony as much as what they saw that night that's important. We have, one person from Betws in Bridgend that witnessed military jets and helicopters pursuing a cluster of lights in the sky. And I've spoken to this witness, and he told me the cluster of lights were green in colour. It gets better. And this is recently on the Sky programme that Gary and I did on UFO conspiracies with Craig Charles. I do remember a massive explosion that shook our bungalow and a huge red flash across the sky. I remember talking to you about it. You saw the woods behind you light up. Yes, it's not something you forget. We back onto the woods. Never did find out what it was. This person witnessed the object go into Smilog Woods, and all the woods light up that night. They live in Pontyclun. I had a new primary witness come forward from Pentyrch. On Friday the 26th of February 2016, I was woken up in the middle of the night by a loud aircraft noise and very bright lights. I looked out of the bedroom window over towards the fields behind the primary school in Tinnycoid Woods. I was concerned as the lights were so bright and the noise so loud I thought an aircraft was crashing in the fields due to the low height. I continued to watch from the window at the bright lights combination of very bright white lights and red lights, trying to work out what was happening when literally the lights went and the aircraft went. I couldn't decide whether it had gone to the ground or flew off. It happened quickly where I was, and I looked and looked as if one went to the ground. I couldn't make out the amount of aircraft as the lights were blinding, but there were a few by the different engine noises. I stayed still, watching and waiting for signs of the crash to decide whether to go out and help. I could not see any smoke or signs of a crash. It was bizarre, as we had very little sleep in our house, but our children didn't wake, and this is something Anne slept all night. It was the only night since 2007 that I have not had a child awake. This is something that still stands out as being very odd to this day for us, as it's still the only night our children did not wake. This is when I was standing on the gate, and she too says that the aircraft went and the lights went. Her name has been redacted to protect her identity. And then we have the Colwinston witness, who came forward to Swansea UFO Network, who were the first UFO group to initially contact me. A family living in Colwinston, a village in a rural setting southeast of Bridgend, was awoken just after 2 AM when the house vibrating. The house felt like it was shaking, and the noise, never heard it in my life, very strange noise, almost felt like it was static feeling. The dog was barking and was described by the witness as bonkers behaviour, which was not characteristic. Through the window, the witness saw a large object fly over the house, roughly west to east, just over the rooftop. The object displayed a row of orange and red lights, and its underneath surface had a light green hue. A green light glow was seen leaving the main group of lights, and this descended into the fields in an area southeast of Colwinston. During this time, the witness managed to take several photographs on his mobile phone, which we have. About 6 to 7 minutes later, several aircraft were heard flying overhead, bright lights were seen, and what were thought to be Apache helicopters were heard flying around, which were dark and did not display any navigation lights at 2:33 AM. These were heard circling the area where the green light had gone down for 5 to 6 minutes. These aircraft then headed off towards northeast, roughly in the direction of Pentrych and Pentyrch area. Then all went quiet and the witnesses went back to bed. Following the incident, the official explanation that this had been a military exercise persuaded the witnesses that this had been the case. But recently, on learning of the incident at Pentyrch, the witnesses checked the dates and times of their photos and realised the incident that they experienced was on the same night and therefore must be linked in some way. They then contacted Swansea UFO Network. These are the photographs taken by the Colwinston witness in the early hours of the 26th of February 2016 at 2:33 AM. These are the barrels or the orbs that were jettisoned from the pyramid. I don't know to this day what happened to the pyramid, but I do have an idea what happened to these orbs. And they were pursued and shot down by the military next to a hospital over a residential area. Now, I want to say something to the Colwinston witness. I've been accused by Swansea UFO Network of releasing these photographs without permission, something that I would never do. I've been placed in a position where I have to defend myself, and I've been asked to do so, so I am going to. Bear with me. I would personally like to address Martin, the alias given to the Colwinston witness. I would like to put your mind at rest that the longitude and latitude shown on your photographs of the UFOs objects taken that night do not show your location, only the location of the village of Colwinston. When you submitted the photographs to Swansea UFO Network, it was their responsibility to check the content before giving me permission to release them. I would like to offer my sincerest apologies to you My frustrations with this so-called UFO group boiled over when they refused to pass copies of the original photographs to the Welsh MP after Gary and I had a meeting with them, effectively preventing us from going to Welsh Government and exposing this case. They implied it was your fault, and they did not have the original photographs, when in fact they had them all along, and still do. I beseech you to release the video taken that night, not for me, not even for this case, but for the furtherment of disclosure in this country and across the world, because you know this case was real. The other witnesses know this case was real. And the so-called UFO group know this case was real. And we need the ammunition to take this case forward to the UK government, to demand answers for every human being on this planet, and to get disclosure we so greatly deserve on this subject once and for all. I hope you still have my number. But if you prefer, you can contact us through the Pentyrch website, so that we can talk in confidence, to set aside any doubts or differences in order to take this forward, for all our sakes. This case is not, nor has it ever been, about me. This case is about all of you, and all of our children. For me, this burden will never go away. It has consumed my life. It never rests. It never stops. When I try to ignore it, it haunts me. And it will continue to haunt me until the whole truth is told, or until my dying day. If not for me, do it for everyone else. And this is why I walked away from Swansea UFO Network, who not only exposed me, because I wouldn't be here if they hadn't, but they've exposed all the witnesses' real names in writing and published it on the internet. The names have been redacted. We have David and Stephen and Donna, and you can clearly see these are their real names, not the aliases we gave them. Written by Emlyn Williams, the founder of Swansea UFO Network, just 2 weeks after he met us, when he knew full well we did not want to be identified. My second primary, David, wrote on Sufon's wall, this is for Emlyn Lloyd Williams, who was given a witness statement on the grounds that the witness's name would not be revealed, but he could not stick to a confidential agreement, and has now put the witness's name online, which is clearly a breach and will no longer be doing business with this unprofessional group. You should be ashamed, Emlyn Williams. But he also posted it on Emlyn's page. When a witness gives an account of what they have seen and says they don't want their name to be mentioned, it's very unprofessional to use their name when they've clearly been told not to. I have a statement here from the founder of Paranormal Now, Mr. Richard Oliver. Sufon, or Swansea UFO Network, purposely revealed the names and identities of witnesses. I, Richard Oliver, am writing this statement on behalf of Caz Clarke, as I have witnessed on numerous occasions gross misconduct being carried out by the group known as Swansea UFO Network. I have personally witnessed Emlyn Williams disclose the identity of a witness who wished to remain anonymous, which was not, under any circumstances, an accident. As he approached myself, my partner, my friends and other YouTubers and said, you know Caz and Dave? I call them Chaz and Dave, but that's not their real name. His real name is, and that too has been redacted by me. Then reported to Caz the following day what I witnessed. I also witnessed Caz being sent the Cole Winston photographs from Sufon for Caz to use as evidence. I won't read it all, but I will continue. As I am a paranormal investigator with over 20 years experience in this field, yes, I've become good friends with Caz, even best friends. Put that aside, it is my professional opinion, having seen Caz and what she has gone through regarding the Pentyrch Incident, to make it public, You can only imagine how traumatic and difficult it is. Personally, witnessing the backlash and onslaught of abuse and false allegations that Caz has been experienced from Sufon has made this journey incredibly more difficult and traumatic for Caz, and I personally thank Richard Oliver for this statement that he made of his own volition. In Swansea's blog, on the 1st of June 2021, this is after Emlyn Williams and Mike Maunder from Swansea UFO Network met the Colwinston witness the first time, and after they'd spoken to this witness, they then came to Pentyrch to meet myself and David, along with the Colwinston witness. And they secretly recorded us without our knowledge or consent.
Yeah, tell you why.
That is the Colwinston witness who wishes to remain anonymous.
Have you deleted it? You
That's
filmed
me.
it, but you deleted it. Have you still got the same phone?
No.
Have you still got that phone?
And they posted this on the internet, which I'm sure is illegal.
There's four photographs.
With times on.
Are you fucking shitting me?
Excuse the profanities. But I just learned about the photographs.
I thought there was nothing on it. I just went on Google.
I love you.
Okay, that's enough of that. So they have no moral compass either.
Yeah, tell you why. Yeah, tell you why. Because I thought it was a military exercise, I thought nothing of it. Because obviously space on your phone, you just delete things, don't you? You told me, didn't you?
Have you deleted it? You filmed it, but you deleted it.
Deleted it,
Have you
yeah.
still got the same phone?
No. No.
Have you still got that phone?
No. No.
Got it.
I know.
But there's four photographs. But there is photographs with
There's four
times on.
photographs.
With times on.
Are you fucking shitting me, Scott?
No.
Are you shitting me? Have you got them?
Yeah, he's got them.
I thought there was nothing on there.
Well,
I thought there was nothing on there. I just went on Google.
I love you.
No, I just went on.
I thought you were gonna say
It's nothing special. It's nothing special. What would it be?
I said that will mean nothing.
But this is the big one. They accused me of releasing these photographs without permission. That I so-called got the photographs via Bluetooth from the witness. They were actually sent to me via WhatsApp by Emlyn Williams, the founder of Swansea UFO Network, who accused me of releasing these photographs without permission, and I have permission. I still have the phone, if anybody would like to see it today. He gave me permission to release the photographs. There's no mention of the longitude or latitude, or that we were going to release these photographs together. Martin has given permission to publish the photographs. You've seen the photographs, they are the photographs. But thank you, amazing. Now I'm going to pass you over to Gary Jones, who's going to show you the evidence. I've only shown you part of it, just a little bit of what happened that night. But I will come back afterwards, because I have some summing up to do. So put your hands together, please, for Mr. Gary Jones.
Alright, so just make sure this is working. Excellent. Alright, so you've just heard from Caz Clarke, and I think already you can see that this was never a military exercise, and all requests for documentation and paperwork to prove such a thing has never materialized, and when we do ask them, they can't even provide a single shred of paper. They're clearly hiding something, and we've been grinding them down to the point now where they can't even say information is not held or it's within section 26. So they know that we know, it's just they can't come out and admittedly say it. But we've already smashed the cover story a bit, so all I'm going to do is just grind it into the dirt and stick the final nail in the coffin with it, and I'll give you some other bits to go with it, alright? Okay, so I'm just going to start with this because we've been accused of doing all this for money and just for fame. But this is our contract, at least a part of it, that we signed with Sky History Channel. And just to point out that little red bit there, we gave our £200 speaking fees, that's individual fees, 400 quid to autistic charity in Wales. That was actually in our contract that we signed. So when we did that, they got 400 quid. So, and we've been doing that with all the speakers' fees that we've ever had. You know, sometimes people pay us, you know, the petrol and, you know, the travel stuff. But when it comes to money that we get paid to do this, it all goes to the charities. So let that be a thorn in their sides, because we're not doing this for money at all. It's costing us money just to get you this information. So now I'm going to introduce a witness who is very important to this case. We call her Donna. And Donna is very important to this case for a number of reasons. She practically witnessed all other things, except of course the thing with the orbs and the triangle, but there are many other things she witnessed herself. And just a couple of things for you to look at there while I'm speaking about it. Donna knows the area. She lives in Pentyrch, she knows Caz and David, and she was also a witness to the planes that were circling for 3 days and nights. She witnessed how Caz and David behaved after they saw this event, and of course was a witness to many of the other things herself, such as the snow in the fields, the ball patch, the military and everything like that. And I thought it would be interesting to introduce her a bit more, because everyone's accusing Caz of being just one witness and that's it. Oh, there's one witness to this case, so therefore we can just shrug it away because she's doing it for money and fame. Oh, no, we're not. Now, after the sun came up on that night, Donna actually has given me a statement over the years, and I've had a chance to speak with her because she is a working mum, you know, so her time is busy. The time is limited, but now that I've had a chance to speak with her over the years, I've been able to put some real good information together. That there is the ball patch. This is Tinnacoid Road. And one of the things that Caz and David said to her is that one of those green orbs that came out of the top of this pyramid, the one that flashed the planes and told them to come in the direction, you know, this is roughly where it went, sort of a northeast, northwesterly, westerly kind of direction. They went across the field into this one here and was hoping maybe they might find some more evidence of something on the ground, something physical, but they didn't find anything, but they just checked it out anyway. So they came back into the ball patch area here, and there's a reason we call it the ball patch. It's not because the land is bald and barren, it's just that you can see from this photograph here, the grass itself looks like it's had the life sucked out of it. The ground itself just looks barren. And for many years, nothing would grow there. And any time that something did actually manage to grow, within a matter of like a day, a week, you know, the plants would actually would not grow. And this is where those fingers, that hand of lightning came down. This is actually the area right here. And that's what Caz was looking at. It was like those orange, big red orange fiery like fingers that stopped the craft from hitting the ground like it was trying to correct itself. And Donna said that as she was coming round these areas, she felt like some sort of strange heat on her face, like some sort of energy was affecting her body, her face. And you can see in the yellow there, as I came round, the right side of my face became warm, which I thought was strange, as I don't feel the right side of my body. She has a medical condition, you know, nerve damage in that side, but she was getting sensation from all this, which normally she doesn't. Now this is some screenshots taken from a video of Smilog Woods. Remember the strange snow we've talked about in the past? Well, she's also a witness to this, and I'm just showing you the screenshots here of how that looked like when you were standing, if you were there that day standing in the Pentyrch fields around that patchy area. This is what it would have looked like. And you can see, I'm not going to read it all, I'm just highlighting the parts I want you to look at. It wasn't snow, it was the size of rice, but in a bowl shape, but it felt like marshmallow. You could squeeze it, and it would near enough go back to its original shape. Oh, you ever held snow in the winter and you get that crunchy sound and it sort of melts? This has got some sort of like memory shape sort of ability to it. It goes back to the way it practically looked when you picked it up previously, which is very strange. And just to describe some more, as I was doing this is something else I find interesting. I had a weird feeling that something was with me or watching me. I scanned the area but couldn't see anyone or anything. So there's just something about this area that's making her feel very, very strange. Now bear in mind now, right, this is just following the few hours, the sunrise, after the event where that hand of lightning come down. A lot of energy has gone into that ground and she's feeling it. Now this is something I found recently actually, and it's a report by the Defense Intelligence reference document here. And it lists a number of all these very strange things that people experience when they have what they call here exposure to anomalous vehicles. UFOs, UAPs they're now calling them. And you can see some of the listed things in this document here. Hair loss, fever, nosebleeds, heart palpitations, headaches, nightmares, burnt skin. And there are many, at least like 100 others or so, that this document actually listed. So it just shows that the military and the governments are aware of what effects this thing has on people. Oh, I forgot to show you that. What was causing it? Electromagnetic radiation. Now anyone who knows anything about these craft, they seem to have some kind of electromagnetic radiation capabilities, or they use electromagnetism as a means of a propulsion or power source, which I find very interesting. Now, when we were investigating all this, you know, there's the ball patch again. These are some of the magnetic field readings that we were getting. This is the burned gorse bush that has now since been chopped down. The ball patch area has now been destroyed. It's no longer there. Just 2 days after the book came out, actually, within 2 days. Coincidence. But I want you to see, look, Caz and David suffered long-term health problems after the event. Donna herself has also suffered unusual symptoms after experiencing all this. Now, when I was going into this field, and many others who wanted to be a part of the event that day just to see what we were doing, they also talked about migraines, nausea, burning skin, sensitivity to light and dizziness. I myself experienced this on at least 5 or 6 occasions. I'd go home, I feel like I've just had the life sucked out of me, and I've come down with a massive fever or something. But it wasn't a fever and it wasn't an illness. It was something coming off of this land. And other people who were sensitive to EMF, they also reported ill health problems. And you know, I don't know if you've ever heard of EMF sensitivity. Some people have reported that they're very sensitive. Down there is the boundary between the second and third field. I'll get into this as I go forward. But it's like some people would just come into the tree line there and they wouldn't go any further. It's just, no, I can't go any further. There's just something not right here. They didn't even know, some of them, about that ball patch area. They weren't familiar with it. They just walked in there, couldn't understand why they wouldn't go any further. It was just something strange. And there was another lady one time who actually, I think she's over it now, but she had cancer at the time. She went into that field with Caz just for like a tour, a walk around. She was normally like very ill and lethargic, you know, because of the chemo and all the other treatments she's on. She comes out of that field, she feels like she's just been reborn. Really, really healthy, like, you know, she feels great. I don't know how long that lasted, but I mean, that is a very, very strange thing indeed. So what is this snow? This is a phenomenon that's been reported a number of times, and some people refer to it as angel hair phenomena. Now, I found this report, and it has been covered on a number of TV stations, American and British. And just to show you how they describe it, look, this was a case from Oloron, France, October 17th, 1952. Someone described seeing this sort of like long cylinder-like object. It looked like some sort of like a white, cottony, silky kind of thing. But what's really interesting is that out of the cylinder, or following it, were these 30 smaller objects. Now, if you remember what Caz said she saw, or what David especially saw, the 15 to 20 objects, they were all red in colour and they all had this strange arcing of lightning coming off of them. A pyramid had arcing lightning coming off of them. One of those orbs actually shined light on Caz, as she said. She felt like she was being scanned. I just find these things very interesting in the coincidence. Also the movements, the rapid and short zigzags. Some of I think it was the one that shined the light on the planes to come and follow it. Remember Caz said it was bouncing around like Tigger, zigzagging and moving? All of these things get reported a number of times where people get close up and see these things. It's just a common thing. Alright? And I just thought I'd put this in with the strange properties. Look, they say here that it had a sort of, the material would dissolve quickly. It had a strange texture. Jellyfish and squishy to the touch, like the marshmallow description. It would have this sort of like spider web appearance, and this is following a massive UFO event. And some people have actually questioned us as to why they never got samples. Well, who knew there was going to be a big investigation afterwards? Or whether or not, you know, because they're not, as Caz said, none of them are UFO investigators. They didn't know about collecting samples. And by the sounds of it anyway, it would have been difficult to keep these things in possession, because sometimes when people have tried to collect this material, it dissolves very quickly. Quicker than anyone can get it back to a lab and do some sort of analysis on it. But you know, there have been people who have done it, and they've found out that it's got some very high tense strength material properties, and it's also got some sort of silicon and magnesium and high tension torsion properties. But it would be amazing if we could have sampled it, because I wonder we would have found something similar. Now this is something else that Donna relayed to me. This was later on. It wasn't like the first couple of times I met her, but she reported strange people in these fields after the military had gone. And this is something I have found to be quite consistent when major military sightings have actually happened, especially of this magnitude. You know, you get the craft, then you get the military stepping in, and then sometime later, strange people who don't look like they belong in the area just suddenly come along, and they seem to just observe or monitor or whatever it is they're doing. And Donna described to me that two people, I'll just give you an idea of what you're looking at here. This is where the military were doing a lot of their stuff. This is the abandoned quarry here. Can anybody see that red dot? Can anybody see it? Alright, well this is the abandoned quarry. This is a path that you can walk down here, and these arrows represent a number of things. The yellow arrow represents the direction Donna was coming from. This is a gate down by here, look. And they were walking up this way where the blue arrow is. Donna was with friends, family, walking the dog. It was a nice day, they just wanted to get out and stretch their legs. But this is where they saw the strange two people, right here, look. And seeing Donna and the dog, they decided to take a detour to the right and go up the side of this particular gap here. And I'm going to play a couple of minutes of clip, and I'll let Donna describe to you what she saw. So, Donna, you're here.
I am.
I'm not showing you. There's a post over there that you can climb. But there were two people with a dog, and you said they were strange, and why is that?
They were just, it felt like they were out of place. They didn't belong here. So the woman was quite tall, around about 6 foot, or maybe just under. She had dirty blonde, surfer, curly hair, down to her shoulders, just under.
Curly?
Yeah, it was definitely curly.
Dirty blonde, so yeah, like dark blonde.
She made me think she was like Australian or a surfer, that kind of dirty blonde. She had very sharp features, she was thin. Her face, her jawline, her eyeline sockets, everything was pristine and sharp, and I would say very symmetrical. The bloke so she was quite an attractive lady then? She was. To be honest, she made me think like she was from someone on Home and Away or something, like she was had been an actress or something. She just struck me like I knew her from somewhere, but definitely nowhere from here. I've never seen her since. And what about the bloke? Can't find her. The bloke was shorter than her. His head come up to just over her shoulders. He had a beanie hat on. He had dark hair. Again, sharp features on his jawline, darker than she was. She was quite. I don't want to say like albino white, but very white compared to him. Milky white. Yeah, I don't want to say he was dark or just normal colour skin. Yeah. So why were they out of place? Because they didn't. It was just they didn't belong here. They had the wrong clothes on for the area that you're walking in. He had like a mountain jacket on with a big rucksack and a beanie hat on. It was a nice day, so even if it's cold, you don't need to wear stuff like that. If you're from here, you know you don't need to wear stuff like that. Okay. She was so they were foreigners? Yeah, she was different clothing, completely different from him. I could see that her arms, the bottom half of her arms, she was skinny. Like a size 8? I don't know, she was quite tall, so I want to say maybe, yeah, no, probably, yeah. So what does this have to do with the Pentyrch thing? For me, because the people were just weird. The fact that they've, not being rude, just turned up out of the blue. It wasn't so much that I was coming around the corner. They didn't have enough time to disappear from so by the time they've walked up the path, and you said there's something about the dog is weird? The dog, my dog's gone up towards their dog. She wouldn't attack anyone, but if a dog approaches a dog like that, normally the other dog will react in a certain way, whether that be running away or coming towards you, eat anything. But the dog done nothing. It never got commanded by them to do anything. It just they didn't say nothing or give eye contact? No, didn't. It was looking towards like, us. It's okay, don't worry, we'll go this way, is it, or what? Yeah, they didn't, it wasn't they didn't say nothing? No, it wasn't even that long, like we didn't stand there in our conversations. Literally, I've jumped over the fence, the dog's run off, my mate's gone to grab the dog, I've grabbed the dog, looked up at them. There's been no, like, exchange from them. I've gone, oh, dogs, sorry. And there's like nothing back off them, or there's no reaction off their dog. And they've literally... So you came, we're going down the path now, so you came here. We walked down to, I'll show you now. Just
Do you run out to see them, or you run out to see them, like, are you okay or something, or?
No, I didn't say nothing to them because the dogs didn't do anything to each other. It was more, I just grabbed the dog.
So they had no time to get out of your sight?
Yeah, they were literally 10 feet in front of us.
So, it's very interesting that the people don't seem to fit the area, they don't seem to be dressed for the occasion, and the most interesting thing is they don't seem to have the right mannerisms or the right sort of characteristics. You know, when you meet someone rambling, walking, or whatever it is that you do out in the countryside, they've just disappeared around that corner and they couldn't see him again. And in February, I think this is just coming into March time, so the trees haven't quite got all their leaves here. You can see right through those trees and right through them. They couldn't have got away, but they disappeared. I find that very, very strange. And that's not the first time something like this has been reported. Now you can make it out what you want, but for me that's very significant because it's just more bizarre things connected to the case. Now, yeah, EMF, misunderstood by others. Now this is something I have to nail down a bit more, right? Because I've worked very hard on this particular piece of evidence. Because when we were originally contacted, and this was like a year before the Sky History thing went out, they were asking, you know, do you want to be on the show? Would you like to be involved? And when we started to get into the discussions of the case and what we were actually going to use, I sent them just about everything we had on the EMF. I sent it to Sky History, I told them what it was about, I laid it out for them, pure and simple. And months went by where I explained it, but then for some reason, Craig Charles and Sarah Curtis really failed to cover this. If anything, I think they tried to sabotage this evidence, and I'm going to show you why. Because, you know, electromagnetic radiation was found with EMF scans, and I've always said this, that no man-made or natural explanation has ever been offered. There's no man-made object or anything natural in that area, in the area now, that would cause the EMF. There are man-made objects there, but they're just, it's not giving off the EMF. And I'm going to show this to you. But they failed to cover it. And they sabotaged it with, they put Emlyn Williams on at the end. He didn't do any of the scans. He didn't actually do the further studies afterwards. But I do stand up for him a bit on this one, right? They did use him as a target to discredit it, right? But I felt if they're going to cover it, they should have talked to me about it, because I only got like 2 minutes and I was talking about more or less the FOIs and stuff and the radar returns. But they deliberately ignored this, and I'm not happy about it. But this is something that I want to cover because, you know, baseline readings and test comparisons. This is something Sarah brought up. What is the baseline reading? Well, what is a baseline reading? It's quite simple when you're doing EMF scans, because any time in case histories I've studied, whenever these objects, especially like large ones or something that, you know, about the size of a car or whatever, when they get close into the fields or farmland, countryside, anywhere where there's like countryside areas, if they get close enough or if they even land, they do leave radiation signals behind. And if you've got EMF scanners or Geiger counters, you might be able to detect it. So what was the baseline reading? Okay, let me explain. The scanner that we had at the time measured in two different areas, electrical field and a magnetic field. The electrical field never registered anything. It was always zero, inside, outside, nowhere. But when you got with the magnetic field, right, the areas that were not affected, the ones that we know were not affected by anything, right, that's in Smilog and Pentyrch, 5 miles separate of each other. Usually it was about 0.05 to 0.1 microtesla, and I'll explain the measurements of that, but that's just normal background stuff. You have one now on you and you go anywhere, and that's probably what you'll get. But once we got into the areas where we know that were affected, then suddenly the number jumped up. It went from 0.45 to 0.7 microtesla. That's for Smilog Woods. And then when we went to the Pentyrch fields, and this is multiple scans, it was anywhere between 0.5 and 1. And sometimes it went as high as 1.2 and 1.7. Now these numbers are quite considerate. They don't sound big, but they are quite big, and I'm going to explain why that is. But that was what we were getting for 2 years at least. This is the map that we put together originally. You can see there's the gate, that little orange line there with the 2 blue dots. This number of other coloured dots are what we actually measured. This is just the magnetic field range, not the electrical field now, just the magnetic field. Now that yellow line there, and that yellow line there, this represents the path that the actual craft took. Now, when Caz and David spoke to me originally about this, They told me what the craft did. When they finally saw it and how it moved, it started right down here, seemed to come close to them, and then it went back. That was a path that it followed, and amazingly, when we started to scan it all, we were mapping it out, and I'll explain how that came about. But that's the path that it followed. You can't make that up. You just simply cannot make that up. Now, let me just explain what we've done. Once we'd scanned all the areas and we were certain that it's not coming from radios or antennas or people's mobile phones, the camera's not going to affect the EMF reader, because if you're doing ghost hunters or you've seen people online when they're filming it and they're doing their EMFs, it would make the entire exercise pointless because they can just say it's the camera. The camera has nothing to do with it. Nothing. But once we were able to figure out what we had, I said we got to do a grid reference search. The grid reference search is very simple. Once you've got an idea of where everything is, you can just start in an area, square it all off or quadrant it all off, whatever, and you can just go left to right and up and down, and wherever you get a signal, you can mark it out. You can mark it with a stick or a ribbon or something, and then when you're finally finished, you get what you see there. That's the trail. There's the ball patch. The ball patch was the most active area. This is Smilog Woods. That's the impact site right there. These blue lines represent the bike trails people come down. And that yellow line there that Caz showed you earlier, right, that's actually where the, whatever it is, one of the barrel orbs or whatever they shot down, that's where it came through. Right into the impact area. And if you follow that back, it goes right to Lantris and Common by the Royal Glamorgan Hospital. It all fits. It all fits. Now, I don't know how it was able to stay active in that area for long, but it must have been some pretty powerful craft, you know, with powerful energy coming from it to do that, because obviously it's been hit and it's left a trail for us to find at least 2 or 3 years after at least. Now, someone actually put a chart together of the Pentyrch field area, and I want you to pay attention to that number on the bottom right there. It's averaging out what we got when we did the grid reference search, and it's saying there 0.52 microtesla. Now, let's just take a look at this. This is a chart, and there's the website that you can get it off. It lists the magnetic field strength that is safe for you in your home. And they've got it here 1 to 5 and over 5. Now, in microtesla, if you times it by 10, right, that gives you the milligauss reading. They're the same measurements of unit, just measured differently. Milligauss is actually 10 times what microtesla is. And if I just show you here, look, 1 milligauss equals 0.1 microtesla. 5 milligauss equals 0.5, and I got a 0.52. And if I show you over there, look, the bit that's highlighted in red, anything above a 5 is considered of extreme concern, and this is coming from an outdoor area with no power cables, no underground cables, no nothing. So what the hell is causing that signal to be there? And I asked a bunch of people this, you know, people who had done their own UFO investigations, who had experience with all this, and they said the most likely cause of it is that that area has become magnetized. The minerals and the soil and the rocks and whatever is there, it's become magnetized for a while, and that's why our meter was picking it up. And over time it's dissipated and the ground has gone back to normal. You can go through there now yourself if you want to. I'll even show you where to find it, and you won't find a damn thing. Won't find anything. EMF scans are correct because someone was trying to tell us that this particular meter that we used, I'm not going to read all this, but they're trying to say, right, that when we were using this particular model, and the model that we used was called GM3120, that the model we're using is giving off 10 times a higher reading than what's actually being put together. So they're trying to say we're 10 times off the scale. No, we're not. Right? I want to show you something here. This is the one that we had. It's called KK Moon. This one here is by Pentyrch. Now you can see the electrical field readings on the top, and that's the magnetic field readings on the bottom. Someone is actually testing a mobile phone there on both of these occasions. There's our KK Moon look, and there's our one. This one here has no name on it. It's a different brand altogether. Although it has the same sort of technical spec layout and everything, they've obviously made it with inferior parts, which is why this particular model here is absolutely useless. It doesn't do anything. You can buy it, but it won't be effective for you. If you want to buy a cheap meter just to get started, I always recommend getting these two models, the KK Moon or the Pentyrch one, because that one there, the no name or other brands like it, will just be useless to you. So that's a little personal experience there. Just to show you something that we also did, these are my other meters that I compared it with. That's my more expensive one there. That cost me like £125. These other two are the ones that we had as well. That little white thing on the bottom there, I was just testing it on my Geiger counter, and I was just moving them all around, and as you can see, the one with no name, no matter where I put it, didn't find anything at all. And just test it in the house, just so I could, you know, compare it with other items. Your TV, your electrical box, you know, you top up your electric, toasters, microwaves, you can see, look, there they are on the floor, not being affected, and there they are giving off accurate readings for their specifications. So the readings we got are accurate. I've tested and tested and tested and tested it again. There's just simply no way you're going to tell me that this is wrong. And that's what Sky History forgot to tell you, or refused to tell you. Sabotaged it. That's probably some of the strongest physical evidence that we've got right now to show you. So now we're going to look at some really interesting things here. Now this is Caz talking to Ben Emlyn Jones. That's not Emlyn Williams. This is Ben Emlyn Jones of the Hospital Porter UFO. He does his own thing. He came down to speak with us and he wanted to look at it himself. This is the gate that Caz was standing on. This gate here. I want you to pay attention to the coloration of the trees there. On the left you can see, yeah, it's getting into autumn now. So they're starting to lose their colour. But look how quick it's losing the colour on the right compared to the left, because this is where the green barrel was when it shined all that energy in that direction. It's affected that tree much more than this side over here. And just to show you something else, again, this is our pyramid. If you remember, right, the gate's down by here on this drawing, look, and there was one red barrel that would sort of like watch while the other one was interacting with Caz and David, especially Caz. This is the area here, look, where it was. I don't know if you can see it there, look, but that particular bush there is absolutely dead. It didn't grow for many years. And I want you to pay attention to how the leaves look, right? Because from the left side of this picture, it's green, and then it starts to go like a yellowish color, then it starts to go brown, and then they just start to rot, and then there's nothing there. And then when you follow it on, look, again, it follows, and it's consistent. And there's some of the scans that we got from that area. That was an active area for many years. No other areas beside the gate in there, in that first field, was showing EMF signals. There's a cable that runs along further up, but it's nowhere near this area. That's an artificial man thing, right? But that's not in the other field where the major craft had been seen. And just to give you an idea of how historical cases prove this, this is a case from 1981 called Trans-N Province Physical Trace Case. This was an object that landed in France, and that's what it looked like there. The one witness who saw it said it was like two oval shapes underneath and on top. It landed on the ground, it left physical burns, the plants were affected, the grass was affected, and people actually came in and tested the area. They did soil samples and grass samples, took it to a lab, produced a report, and one of the things that they really discovered is that the chlorophyll, now this is the green, this is what gives grass and leaves that green color. Chlorophyll is the chemical that makes it green. But when they discovered that the area that had been affected, the chlorophyll had been weakened by at least 30 to 50%. And they concluded that it had to be some type of electric energy field, most likely electromagnetic radiation. So more consistencies with this case and that one again. And I would have liked to have done some real full scientific investigation. We were promised some university people would come down and do it, but they never did, despite promising us, you know. So we had to make do with what we got at the time, you know. We don't have that equipment, and it costs a lot of money to do. So I would have liked to have done it, but when people promise you and they don't deliver, you know, I can't take responsibility of that. I'm just going to play you this quick case here of what they discovered.
The two main points of this case, which was studied officially, is that it left a lot of physical evidence to study. The second point is that it was one of the most thoroughly investigated cases scientifically in all UFO history.
GAPAN, a unit of the French space agency mandated to investigate UFO reports, is called in to examine the site and collect soil and vegetation samples for analysis. The samples taken by forensic technicians are quickly analyzed in the lab. The results are startling. Plant matter taken from the landing spot show a significant reduction in chlorophyll levels, as if the plants had aged with unnatural speed. This effect is consistent with exposure to radiation. The soil underwent a chemical reaction that typically takes place nearly 600 degrees centigrade, well over 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. This temperature is consistent with microwave radiation, like the type that's used in a microwave oven. But scientists do not comprehend how the craft could have propelled itself with microwaves. Because of the rare physical evidence, the case attracts intense media interest in France and continues to be studied by UFO experts today.
So yeah, I mean, we don't have that level of investigation, but we've done a hell of a lot of other stuff. And as you can see, the people who have been inside the fields have been affected by it. There's physical evidence, or at least within the trees and the grass and everything else. Let's take a look at Smilog. There you can see again, there's the broken trees. The trees are burnt, but there, look, you can see that pinkish sort of colour on the top right there. Those trees were not like that before, but after the events of that day, those trees are still like that now. You can go up to Smilog and actually see that. This is Paranormal Scholar. They did a documentary on this in 2021 with Caz, and they went up to Smilog Woods and they took some further pictures of this. So this is like 2021, so very, very recent. There's one of the trees, look, with that still silvery, pinkish burn look on it. Now this tree here is very interesting because that one there has signs of distension on it. Distended is the word, I think, is what I'm looking for. It's been stretched from it's been expanded from the inside out. Something inside has caused the tree to expand, and the only thing that really could have done that is some heat affecting it from the inside, causing, you know, the material and the liquid and stuff to expand outwards. And of course we had plenty of EMF signals coming from there. And, you know, this is one thing that Craig Charles and his team got right, because some people are trying to say, oh, it's lightning strikes, it was an earthquake, those trees were like that anyway because of wind damage. Well, you know, this is one thing that they got right, and I'm just going to play this quickly because I want it from their own lips.
Got videos of what she says is the crash site. Now, look at this. Something's come down right through them. Snap them, snap them. We've got photographs of what she says is a clean-up operation. So that's, what are these people doing?
It's undeniable that something's happened here.
We spoke to Gary Jones, who said the Ministry of Defence tried to shut him down, issued him with a Section 26.
They've changed the story at least, I would say, a good half a dozen times at least.
So I've got the weather report in. The wind speed, could the wind have knocked those trees over? But actually it just says a gentle breeze that evening, so that's now gone. As well as earthquake seismic activity. Now bear with me on this one. Sometimes when you get earthquakes and we don't know what causes this, you get lights in the sky. These are known as earthquake lights, perhaps caused by rocks rubbing together, generating electric charge, often mistaken for UFOs, but we now know there was no seismic activity that evening, so we can rule out natural phenomena.
Well, there was seismic activity. That was more from the explosion side of things, not the actual earthquake that's there. Trying to say would knock the trees over, okay? Now, Sufon, oh dear. They put out an article, and I'm going to talk about this in a bit, but this is really the only part that they offered any sort of critique of the evidence for. They're trying to insinuate, right, that this pipe, there is a pipe there, right, that this is probably what was causing the EMF. That pipe's been there for years, and I knew about it from day one, and we scanned it with them, and they know full damn well that that's not causing it. But because now they're at loggerheads with us, because we walked away from them and we continued the case ourselves, I don't know if it's ego or jealousy or something, but look at it up here. Well, I'll read this bit first. We aren't bothered about it either way, but Gary has said there is no pipe or anything man-made in that field. This proves Gary is wrong. Incorrect. They are twisting my words here. I have stated that no man-made or natural sources of EMF can be found, but not that there is no pipe or anything man-made. It's the actual energy coming from there. There's nothing man-made or natural causing it. Oh, there's nothing man-made there. Twisting my words. And I love this bit here. Can this steel pipe create EMF readings? We'll leave that up for you to decide. Well, no. You test it. You do the test. You go and prove yourself on this one. And guess what? I did it for them. And, oh dear. Nothing. Take a look. You can see it there, look, there's the steel, the pipe or steel pipe. And this is my EMF reader, right? And this one, I think it's called GQ EMF 90. And I paid like £125 if I haven't stated that already. And it's like a 3-in-1. It does radio frequencies, electric fields, magnetic fields, and also do like spectrum analysis and things. But honestly, right, there's nothing there. But what I love about it, right, is that they're saying that they're not bothered by it, but then we've got this idiot over here, right, the one they call John, and he's been with this group trying to discredit us, and he's been attacking us, right? He's stating it like an actual fact, and the EMF readings used as evidence were plain wrong. The readings followed the metal pipe buried in the ground. No, they didn't. There's the evidence right there. SUFON knows this. They know this, but they're saying it otherwise, just to try and discredit and smear it. And if I say, if they're not bothered by it, then why are they stating it as factual? There's no EMF coming from the pipe, and I recommend, if anyone wants to, go and test it for yourself. Prove me wrong. I'm only asking for someone to, you know, critique it properly, not just state it as fact and then move on. Right, so Smilog Woods, what caused the broken trees? Well, we know what caused those broken trees, but I'm going to prove it to you. Now this is a map. This is a radar picture of the plane ZZ418, and this is Smilog Woods just underneath it here. And after the events of Pentyrch Fields have taken place, this plane has shifted, along with many other aerial vehicles, over to Smilog Woods. And some of the times here, sometimes they're an hour forward, or sometimes they're correct. I had to go into some conversion races to try and figure this out, but that's the correct time there. It's circling for ages anyway. I mean, this is Lantriston down by here. Someone just by there, look. And then Smilog Woods is right next to that. Look how many laps that plane is doing. And it's right in the area where the impact site is. That's exactly where he is. The center of that, roughly, is the impact site. Now, I had to learn something about this plane because Shadow R1, Snake 48, the Beechcraft airplane, has all these secret technologies on it that I'm not even fully aware of. It's got strange sensors and strange ways to read communications and things, but one of the things I learned about it was something called ISAR. Now, this is a radar that actually has a very unique ability. It can penetrate through thick cloud and forested areas. You know, there's an example of it right there. And what it can do is that it can take normal radar would just scan below or around the area, and it'll just relay like dots on a screen. But this thing can actually detect what certain things might be there, and you can see in those like greenish, bluish colors there, the reddish colors. Look, it can identify a ship, a jet, a plane, an aircraft of various kinds. So this thing is obviously looking for the objects, or at least one of them anyway, hiding in the forest, because that's where it was. And I'll prove it to you. This is another witness statement. Not long after we published some information, people on Facebook were talking, and I spoke to this lady, but this comment here says it all. She said, "My dad was a patient at the Royal Glamorgan Hospital on the night in question. He said he heard a lot of gunfire, aerial activity, and then a huge bang that shook him in his hospital bed. He lived through the war and was an armourer in the RAF, so he knew what he was hearing. He said it was quite unnerving. There was gunfire first. Somebody was shooting at something in that forest. And that guy knows his stuff because he's been in the RAF. He knows what he's hearing." Now there's that helicopter, the Apache helicopter. This had to make a run for Cardiff International Airport. It landed at around 4:34 AM. Now if you can't understand this time here, this is 4:21. That's the seismic signal being registered by the explosion. So the loud explosion has come along, those Apaches are still circling, and one of them's had to make a beeline for the airport because he's got generator fire coming out of his cockpit. The generator failed. This is a multi-million-pound helicopter with some of the most incredible equipment on it, and it failed during an exercise. Apparently because of the military saying it was a simulated explosion. No. They opened fire and they got caught in the cross of it, I reckon. That's what happened. Now this is Matt. Spoke to him as well. This is not long after we released some information again. He said, "I was working a night shift at the Royal Glamorgan Hospital. Can't be certain what time it was exactly, but there was a loud bang that shook the whole hospital." I don't know if you've ever seen Royal Glamorgan Hospital, but this is not a small building. This is a really large complex. And he said, "Shortly following, the smell of sulphur was coming through the vents, which seemed to linger all night, through the corridors of the hospital." Now the smell of sulphur is very interesting because that's like cordite, you know, something that comes from an explosion and explosive ordnance from actual live weaponry. And this is one of the most consistent things next to the explosion. People reporting this smell of sulfur. I mean, look what else he says here. He says, I went outside to try and puzzle what had happened, and smoke seemed to mist through the air. Seemed to be coming from towards the common, the Lantrisson Common area. I thought a factory might have had an explosion of sorts. That's how powerful this thing was. Anyone ever seen factories explode on TV? They're not small things. Now, the only explanation he said we got later on was from the news that the army were on a training exercise. No, they weren't. That also proves that the hospital people, the staff working that night, didn't know nothing about it. Absolutely nothing. Now, this is something I spent 2 weeks trying to figure out. I wanted to see if the trees in Smilog, you know where all the snap trees are, I wanted to see if I could find evidence that they weren't like that before. Now, it took me 2 weeks to do this. I spent 2 weeks on my machine looking for hours every day of videos, people riding their bikes down these trails because they have GoPro helmets or they have cameras on their bikes, and they like to watch themselves riding the trails and doing the big jumps and everything. This is the area here, and as you can see, the trees are perfectly fine. And pay attention to the date. That's on the 21st of February 2016, just 5-6 days before. Nothing wrong with it. This is when Caz and everyone else went up that on the 26th and the 27th. There's the trail of broken canopies here. There's a photograph of it right there. There's one of our broken trees, and as you can see, that's on the 26th and 27th. Nothing wrong with it before, but now something has gone wrong. And I'm lucky to have got this person. His name's Oscar Green. He's a very keen mountain bike rider, and he goes down those trails, and he was encouraged to speak with me, and we had a real good conversation, and this is a portion of it right here. I'll read it out to you. I said to him, I understand you go biking down the Smilog Trail. Could you tell me what you saw? I went up the Smilog in Feb last year sometime, and then a week later the top of the trees were gone and the pallet bench we used to sit on. Do you know what date that might be? He said around the 26th-ish or the 28th maybe, so within that time frame. So you're able to say around the 26th of February, the trees at the bottom of the bike trail, where we're at, were snapped off at the top. Yes, he said. And just to show you by here, look, this is a bit more of the conversation. I said, is that the area there? This is the area. And as you can see, there's the broken pallet ramp, sort of like in the back there, and there's the trees all snapped to pieces. Consistent witness with consistent evidence. Those trees were snapped by something not caused by nature. I asked him any idea what might have caused that. I thought the council had done it. He didn't know what it was at the time, but that area was quickly cordoned off by military, and they wouldn't let anyone up there through the roads, at least anyway, for a good long time. And as Caz has already shown, they had no permission to do that. So you've already seen this, but I'm just going to show it again. This was just after we did the Craig Charles thing. People online talk about the massive explosion that shook our bungalow and a huge red flash across the sky. So the explosions happened, the helm was shaking, and they're seeing this big red flash. The lady goes on to say, you saw the woods behind you light up? Yes, not something we forget, and we went back to the woods, never did find out what it was. Well, now we do know what it was. That was one of those objects being fired upon, led out to its area, and then shot back into the Smilog Woods, and everything else you've seen fits perfectly. Now we just got some more witnesses to the explosions. I want to read this out because everyone's saying that Caz is the only witness. No, we got many more. Again, you've already seen the person talking about the green cluster of lights. That's the conversation that Caz had with this person, and he confirms that this was actually a green cluster of lights. We wanted to confirm that because some of these objects that were seen that night, some of them were red, some of them were green, and they were being chased westward by planes and jets and helicopters, and that's what he saw. Now this is a potential witness on a comment I found online. I put this in later on. I need to speak with him, but because it's fitting a pattern that we've already established, I was out in Chester that night with a friend. We both seen a green orb with a diffused light surrounding it, flying towards South Wales. It never changed shape or made any sound. They're here, you know, just goes on to say for a bit of fun. But that fits a consistent pattern. And anywhere who I haven't spoken to, I just list as potential, right? So you know who I've spoken to and who I haven't. Now this is David again. He said it was around 4 a.m. There was one almighty explosion that came from the direction of where the Apaches were flying around, followed by another huge explosion around 4 or 5 seconds later. So the airborne explosion has happened, and then somebody's gone thump right into Smilog Woods. And then Mike Henbry, another potential key witness. Now this person laid a huge comment out. It's almost like a statement on South Wales Awakening. It was only about a week after the event, and this is a portion of what he said here. I hurried home thinking I had seen something I shouldn't have. I couldn't sleep for hours after. I think it was about 4 a.m. There was an almighty explosion in the distance, followed by a second, 3 or 4 seconds after. Whatever was going on, the MOD were very involved. This is Donna, just saying the same thing. She saw David and Caz were running with adrenaline. They were just absolutely on fire, really excited, and their demeanour was totally different. So she's a witness to that. As I said, Donna has witnessed many other things. Character goes to their character. Sometime after me getting into bed, I heard a big bang from outside. I can't say if I'd been woken by the bang or was just falling asleep, but it sounded like a bomb had gone off. And these are two people we actually met when we were going up to Smilog Woods to do some more EMF scans and just look around. These people were called Sarah and Lisa, and I've spoken to them as well. They were walking their dogs actually, and we were just saying hello, how are you? And they said, oh, what brings you here? And then we got into a conversation, and they told us what they said. That the lanes to Smilog Wood and Beather were closed on the 26th. The main roads appeared open, but the back roads did not seem to be. Lisa goes on to say no one could get into Smilog Wood. Later on, the area had a sulphur smell in the air. And that was apparently for about 2 weeks. And Sarah goes on to say the sulphur smell was present for many days, and this was after the time the explosion happened. Now, I don't know if any simulated ordnance is going to do that. That just releases like a puff and a light, and that's it. Whatever that they used there, that was a very powerful weapon, a live ammunition, and they're not allowed to do that at all anywhere over Wales except the firing range they have in Sennybridge. Unless, of course, they were out in operation doing a real mission that night. They came there to defend this country, or they came there to attack something, and they did it. And they did it under the guise of a military exercise, which we've already disproven. I'll just read out 2 more. This is Chris. I heard a big explosion. I knew there was an explosion as I live right by the Glamorgan Hospital. And this is Rian talking about her friend at the Royal Glamorgan Hospital. She confirmed the hospital shook. It was not an army exercise. Now, one of the reasons that we were given for the roads and why people couldn't get through certain parts of the motorway is that because a lorry had been overturned and it was on fire. It seemed no matter which road you took or which area you went, there was always a lorry on fire. That must have been a big lorry. You know, blocking every road that you could possibly access. Some lorry. So I just thought, I'll ask the South Wales Fire Service, because who else is going to deal with a fire that day? Could you just send me a list of all fires that you attended on the 25th, 26th of February, and just put it in a chronological order, you know, time and frame and everything, where you went. And this red area here, now if they were attending the fire for the lorry of theirs, it would have been about sometime around 4 a.m. But if you take a look at the times here, you can see from the 26th we go through into midnight, that's about 17 minutes past, then we have one close to 1 a.m, then there's another one around 2 a.m, and there's just one after 2 a.m. There's nothing for 4 a.m. and no mention of a lorry. So that was a lie we have uncovered as well. And all you have to do is ask some simple questions. Total lie, they lied about it all. Oh, this is another one. Some people are trying to suggest that what Caz and David were watching that night was military flares being dropped from a plane. Well, as you've already said, they're not allowed to do that over a public area. They're not allowed to do it at all. But someone asked them, I would like to request information regarding Exercise Chameleon. Can you tell me if there were any aircraft flares set off during this exercise, and if so, when and where? And of course they say on the bottom there, a search for information has now been completed within the Ministry of Defence, and I can confirm no information in the scope of your request is held. That's straight from their own lips, they did not use flares. And just to sort of back it up, I did it myself. Can you tell me if there were any parachute jumps? They hit that one under section 26, but the one on the bottom there is, were any devices let loose using parachutes, i.e. flares or chaff? A search again has been completed and there's no information held within the scope of the request. They've confirmed it twice, there's no flares, no nothing let off. Not like that anyway. I mean, this is what the flares look like, just to give you a quick example. They can be dropped from a plane, they come out of a parachute, and they can light up the sky for a minute, 4 minutes. I think the maximum is like 10 minutes. But I think if you're going to see this, this is something what it would look like. And I'll just play this quick while I'm talking. Just to give you some examples, alright? I mean, you've seen the picture that Caz showed for you, that big pyramid with the red lights on. Does that look like a pyramid to you with red lights on it? Does that look like something giving out a hand of lightning? Does that look like something giving off red and green barrel orbs? No, it doesn't. You can see the smoke trails and you can see it light up a big area. No one reported anything like this at all. Every witness I've ever spoken to never once bothered to say, oh, that we saw something lighting up with a parachute on it. Nothing of the sort. And there's planes dropping defensive flares there. Just to give you an example of what this looks like. Nothing like this at all. Right, a NOTAM. This is what we call a notice to airmen. This means, right, that they have to sequester an area that they want to train in. They have to file the paperwork, and you've already seen a good part of that from Caz Clarke. They've got to submit all kinds of stuff, you know, the recce, environmental health, list the number of the military craft that are going to be involved. This is them, the government. I put this in my very first presentation, but let's just show you again. They listed something for the MOD on the 25th, but they didn't put a commencement date in there. So they say, well, we're going to list it, but there's no date when it's going to commence. They just slapped it in there and hope no one would notice any differently. But as you can see, commence, nothing. This is what a typical NOTAM map looks like, and this is the actual one that they gave out for that night. As you can see, look, you know, you've got the areas that are all cordoned off. This is telling you what time it's going on for. This was from about midnight to 7 AM on the 26th. So I thought, okay then, you've listed it there, and you've cordoned off an area to train in, so let's see if we can get the paperwork for it. Just the NOTAM part now. National Air Traffic Services. I asked them, what time was the application made? Could you provide a list of what aircraft and vehicles were used? What time did the official NOTAM get issued, so what time did they authorize it? And could you provide a map of the NOTAM outlining borders and boundaries for said exercise? They have not been able to find anything relating to the specific NOTAM. Nothing. It's okay. So I asked the MOD, figuring that they're the ones that listed it, or so they said. And I asked the same questions again, and all they really did was just delay me, right? You know, usually an FOI of any kind is about 20-30 days response time. They delayed me. They said they need another 20 working days on top of what I've already given them. So really, they kept me waiting for like 2 months. And the best that they could come up with is, a search for information has now been completed within the Ministry of Defence, and I can confirm we hold no information in the scope of your request. They don't have anything. No one's got nothing. And I love this part here, and I think they did this deliberately, or they gave us information that was nothing of what I asked for. I can advise the MOD submits NOTAMs for certain military exercise to the Civil Aviation Authority at least 5 days prior to a military exercise. They didn't list nothing. Not 5 days, not 2 months, not even on the day itself, and not even afterwards when we're catching them out. So they say the Civil Aviation Authority must have it? Okay, let's ask them. Guess what? They don't have it either. Same questions, same asks. Following a review of our held information, it's been determined that the CAA holds no information within the scope of your original request. It's a simple request. Just show me where you have this exercise listed and where and when for what people are going to be involved. No government body of any kind, Ministry of Defence, RAF, Joint Forces Command, Civil Aviation Authority, the National Air Transportation Service, and anyone else you ask just don't have it. This was not a military exercise at all. Case closed. Now this is something else that I came across, and I came across this, I can't remember exactly when, maybe last year, but this is a person, right? You see, when you actually have a plane, a helicopter, you know what transponder codes are, right? It's like a signal, it's like a personal number for the plane. And of course they have these things called International Civil Aviation Organization. It's like a code for a specific area that gets read out to tell you what part of the planet you're on, what location. It's like a mobile, it's like an area code of sorts. And I'll play this and I'll let it talk. This is a website that actually monitors these things. And what I find interesting is so 20 odd aircraft at least listed that night, or what was being used. From 2 AM to 5 AM at least, there's not a single transponder code being given out. They're flying all over South Wales, low over people's houses, causing all kinds of confusion and disruption. And not once is there anything listed. There are those things highlighted in pink and green here. Those are the 26th of February codes. You go through it, right, there's nothing for 2 or 5 AM. And considering the amount of aircraft up that night, you would expect them to have that. The only they can't switch off their transponders because someone's got to know where they are. So the only thing I can think of is that they're sending them out, but civil people can't read them. Only the ministry or the military people can read them. You know, their own frequency to be read. which is consistent with someone on a doing a live mission, not a training exercise. Okay. Oh, this is something that I put in my old one. I'm going to play this, right? If you haven't seen NASA Worldview, it's like a satellite that goes over the Earth, it orbits, and it does like scans a certain layer, then it scans another layer, and it does this composite image at the end, right? Now, it seems somebody knew we were looking for information around these dates, because for these dates, keep an eye on that down there. As we get close to the date in question, just watch what happens. Everything's there for the day, look. Hope you like the music. We get to the 19th, 20th, 21st, 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th, 27th, and back on the 28th the satellite comes back on. Somebody hid information from us. And I thought, well, maybe it's just Wales, maybe it's just that little area, but when you actually switch it to the wider view, you know, you can see the whole world. Watch it again. And who says NASA's not hiding anything? Again, I'll try, I don't know if you can see the date there, but it's the 6th, 7th, 8th, and you'll know now that sometimes one day could be missing, but a whole week, no. World satellite went down, or someone's deleted that information. You'd figure we might find something in the Wales area. I don't need to play the rest of that, but you can see, right, somebody is deleting information, and I have noticed, sorry?
Any explanation been given?
No, I've not been able to figure out why that is, but all I can say is that NASA does have a reputation of deleting and scrubbing information from their own servers when it comes to the UFOs, and there's been plenty of evidence to show that. I'll ask them though, follow it up. So, I'm just going to show you this last slide here, because I'm almost done. If no NOTAM was issued, which proves that this is fake, or at least that's fake for the exercise, what was the military and Air Force doing that night? This was not an exercise, so what were they doing, a joyride? They just got bored when I said, come on lads, it's the commander's birthday, we'll just have some fun. No. There would have been serious court-martial and scandals over that, right? The only explanation is that they came here prepared, ready to do battle with something, or to at least engage in like in a real mission. And I want to show you something here, right? This is the wave. This is like a radio station that broadcasts in mostly the Swansea area. Now these two circles, the yellow and the red one, right, are more or less representing this area here. It's not entirely to scale, but it's more or less accurate enough. You can see there's Lantricent and there's Pentyrch. All the yellow areas that I've put pins in are people who commented on this page, because the wave itself actually deleted all those comments, but I was lucky enough to find them on Facebook, and people who actually talked about the noise and talked about the problems they were having. I listed and pinned everything where they were, and what I want you to pay attention to is look at that big cluster of yellow pins outside of the NOTAM area. They should not have been allowed to do that at all. It's totally against the rules. They should not have been doing it. And this was after 4 AM or going into 5 AM, and the NOTAM they originally so-called had was for 7 AM. They're exceeding the boundary, and Caz has pointed this out to me, that in their own rules, they're not supposed to approach within 3 nautical miles of these areas. So that big red circle there, they shouldn't have been within 3 nautical miles of that boundary, but they've gone 50 miles west outside of it and continued on, carrying on a real thing. They are chasing the rest of those orbs, the barrels. Now I just want to finish up. I just want to finish up on this, and I'm not going to be nasty or anything, but Swansea UFO Network wrote an article in early April of this year, and this article, right, is just a long-worded, absolutely ridiculous article. It's full of biased statements, half-truths, unfounded claims. They're shifting the blame onto us for all their failings. There's inaccurate statements in there, twisting and distortion of words. A lot of it is lacking context. They do show posts that me and Caz have made, especially me, where I do get a little hostile because I'm reacting to their incompetence and their inability to work with us, even though they said they would. You know, and then they just launch into personal insults and attacks, blatant lies, a smear campaign against Caz in particular. This is a woman who has gone through a tremendous traumatic experience, and instead of actually like recognizing that for their own egos, they're attacking this person, and it greatly affects her. It affects me in many ways, but I can deal with it better than most people because I've been doing it a long time. But when you've been through that traumatic experience, you know, you don't give out names, you don't reveal confidential information, you don't do any of that stuff. It's not even an unwritten rule. It's a rule. It's like doctor-patient client privilege. You know what I mean? And the silly thing is, I'll finish up on this. They know this case is real. They've spoken to the Colwinston witness. They have David. They say in this article that he is a genuine witness. He's brilliant. But yet, for some reason, Caz is not. Why is that? It's because she walked away from them and went with me. We went together and did this ourselves, and they don't like it. All right, go read the article yourself. It's called the Pentyrch Saga. You know, if you want to, but they know it's true. They know it's real. And Emlyn, at the end of the Sky History thing, stated on their own website that he now has doubts about it. Well, how can he have doubts when he's saying that the other witnesses are genuine and the photos are genuine, authenticated by themselves, and they're trying to say that Caz and me are just not to be believed? It makes no sense. It's just pure pettiness from them. Anyway, so you can ask yourself the question, why are they trying to discredit the case? It's ridiculous. Now, I'm pretty much finished. I'm going to hand you over to Caz Clarke, but before I do, ask yourselves then, if people are still defending the military exercise narrative, why is it they can't provide the paperwork? Why can't they provide the documentation? Why is it every question that hits to the matter gets hit with a Section 26? And why is it that they can't find any information on the scope of the request? It's simple. They're not going to tell us anything classified if they came here to deal with interdimensional people. Things like that. There's always a secrecy around it. But anyway, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to hand you over to Caz Clarke, and I hope you enjoyed that.
I won't keep you too much longer, but I just want to do a quick summing up for everyone. As you remember, in the beginning, I asked you to be jury members, to be judge and jury in this case, and to seek the evidence. No official governing body or emergency service knew anything about this so-called exercise. The fire service didn't know, the hospital didn't know, the mainstream media did not know, and residents of Pentyrch Incident did not know. The NOTAM team have no information for this so-called NOTAM that was posted last minute. And to top it all, the Ministry of Defence have absolutely no documentation whatsoever for this multi-billion pound operation. There is no detailed recce required by the MOD. There's no environmental survey, no risk assessment, especially for trading over private land. There is no written permission from the landowner without which no exercise could have ever taken place. The Ministry of Defence have lied multiple times on official government documents. They lied about any knowledge of the planes over Pentyrch in the preceding days. They lied about hovering helicopters low over people's homes in the early morning. They lied about exceeding the NOTAM by over 50 miles when they cannot fly within 3 nautical miles of its boundary. They lied about sending a clean-up crew to the fields of Pentyrch, and when asked for a second time, confirmed no information was held, but that was a lie too. They lied about their identity when it is their duty to tell you who they are. They lied about simulated munitions causing the explosions that shook people's homes and the hospital, and registered on the Richter scale 40 miles away. And the answers they did give all fell within the realms of Section 26, not in the public interest. Well, I believe it's very much in the public interest. Hundreds of people called the police on that fateful night to complain about the helicopters hovering over their homes. Multiple witnesses complained about the aircraft noise from well outside the NOTAM area, up to 50 miles away. Multiple witnesses saw the objects the military were pursuing, and some managed to gather photographic and video evidence. Several witnesses experienced road closures that night and found it difficult to get home. Multiple witnesses saw and gathered radar returns for the aircraft above Pentyrch in the preceding days. Multiple witnesses heard and felt the explosions that shook their homes and registered on the Richter scale. This was not a simulated munition. Simulated munitions have no kinetic energy. Some witnessed an object enter the woods that night and the woodland light up. Others heard gunfire and troops on the ground in Smilog Woods, something we know they did not have permission to do. Strange snow witnessed in the fields of Pentyrch and in Smilog Woods when conditions for snow did not exist and was neither forecast. Extremely high and harmful unexplained electromagnetic radiation was found and followed the exact route the pyramid travelled, described by witnesses prior to the commencement of any testing. And finally, I am not the only primary witness, but I am the only one who will speak publicly. So I'm also their voice, so they can be heard too. You've heard the evidence in this case. And even though we're still awaiting answers to some Freedom of Information requests, I think you will agree the evidence is overwhelming. And the only verdict that makes any sense at all is the Pentyrch Incident 2016, above and beyond any reasonable doubt, was real. So where does that leave us? When Kennedy announced putting a man on the moon, we were all involved. When Apollo 13 got into trouble, the whole world watched and waited with bated breath, hoping and praying for the astronauts' safe return. So what has changed that we are excluded now? The more we learn about space, the more ridiculous a notion it is that we are alone. It's not a question anymore of whether or not these things are real. The only question has to be, who are our friends, and indeed, who are our enemies? Because we would be foolish and naive to believe all life forms are benign, when we are not. In the famous words of the late great former President Ronald Reagan, how small and insignificant our problems would be, and how quickly we would come together if we were facing a threat from somewhere out there in the universe. And more recently, Senator Richard Blumenthal said at the Senate hearing for Space Force, we know what they are doing. Our adversaries know what they are doing. And they know that we know what they are doing. But the American people have no idea. And if they did, there would be some great concern. I appeal to all governments across the world to have an open public discussion on this subject, because we are not alone. And if we are indeed facing a threat, then let us face it together, because regardless of rank or status, race or religion in this world, we are all the same. We are all human beings. We are one race, and we are one planet. Let there be an end to this secrecy, for all our sakes. The new age is upon us. The time for change is now. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.